Welcome back, everyone. Today we are back with another book review / summary, this time about Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. Now, the main point of this book is that selling products, aka things you can actually hold in your hand, is much different than the process of selling services, aka things that are invisible. In other words, things like agency services or coaching or mentoring or anything else like that. Maybe a better way of looking at this is that services actually require human labor, somebody's actual time, whether it be yours or somebody on your teams, to deliver. So in any case, let's go ahead and jump right in to the 15 best ideas from Selling the Invisible. The first great idea from this book is this: a product is tangible. You can see it and touch it. A service, by contrast, is intangible. Now, this goes back to the point of why selling services is often harder than selling products. Because a service, something you actually deliver with your time or your team's time, isn't something they can hold in their hand. Even like a personal trainer at the local gym, you can't hold those pounds you will lose like in your hand or something like that. And partially because of this, the buyer of those services, aka your client, they feel much less in control over the entire process and transaction. So anyway, that's kind of the premise of the whole book, so we'll move on here, but just keep that in mind. The next great idea from this book is this: faced with products just like their competitive products, today's product marketers typically have two choices: reduce cost or add value. And what is that added value? Almost without exception, services. In other words, if business A is selling a black microphone and business B is also selling a similar black microphone, usually the best and most significant differentiator there is to add a service. In other words, one of those two brands will say, and we'll throw in 2 hours of one-on-one time to help you set up your microphone and your software. Well, that sounds pretty useful. Or, and we'll get on a discovery call with you to find out what your biggest problems are, how we can solve them. And we'll throw in a few hours of personal coaching on how to record or edit or whatever it might be. But the point is, notice that the most common and actually best bonuses or differentiators usually involve services, which means somebody's time. The next great idea is this: in service marketing and selling, the logical reasons that you should win the business, your competence, your excellence, your talent, just pay the entry fees. Appeal only to a prospect's reason, and you may have no appeal at all. Now, this gets back to one of the main points of all sales, which is that when anybody buys anything, pretty much 90% of what they are buying is not the actual thing itself. It is the person they are buying it from. It is the brand that they are associating themselves with. It is the feeling they get of what they buy it. It is the meaning behind the thing that they are buying. So you kind of get the point. So the point is that when most new or even experienced businesses try to promote or sell their offer, a lot of people revert or resort to logic. In other words, this makes sense. Buy my trinket or buy my widget, and this will help you achieve this result. But the problem with that is that that same exact pitch can actually be made by all of your competitors. In other words, logic is usually not the best tool or the best method to convince your prospect. Logic is actually much more of an entry fee. In other words, just a starting point. Beyond that, the much more important step is getting to emotions. In other words, make them feel comfortable with you. Make them feel that you understand them, that you will try your hardest, or that you have the best chance of getting them to that result they are looking for. The next great idea from this book is this. Unable to see the real differences between the services, prospects look for clues to differences elsewhere. The more similar the services, the more important the differences. In other words, when you are selling any type of manual labor service, you could say, the point is that most of your competitors are actually probably similar to you in that they probably offer a similar process, or at the very least, they promise a similar result. So the point is that when people are deciding between two similar services or products, or pretty much just deciding between two or three or more things that are very similar, these people are forced and naturally to look for differences, even if they're tiny, tiny little differences. Like one brand says, I only target new mothers. Well, then that person, if they fit that category, will naturally go there. Or if another company who offers the exact same outcome, if they say, we help agency owners to blah, 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 then those people will specifically go with them, and so forth. Now, I only mentioned the type of person that we are going after, but you could go after a million other factors, such as business size, annual revenue, niche, and much more. For more on the extremely important topic of positioning and differentiation, then of course check out my video here, or I discuss it a lot more in my other videos as well. The next great idea from this book is this. Your prospect faces three options: using your service, doing it themselves, or not doing it at all. In many cases, then, your biggest competitors are not your competitors. They are your prospects. Now, there are actually many reasons to keep this in mind, which is that you should not only worry about your competitors. I know a lot of people like to say, oh, what are my competitors charging? What are they offering? How are they marketing? Where are they advertising? In other words, what are they doing so that I could undercut them or copy them or overlap them, or pretty much just be a better version of? But the point is that whether your prospect chooses to follow up with you or to respond or to buy from you actually has much more to do with themselves than with any other competitor you might have. So, while this is definitely a topic for another video, which I will definitely make soon, subscribe or like below as well, of course, the point is that when you're thinking of objections to counter on your sales calls or on your sales page or in your copy or wherever, you should consider your competitors, but on top of that, you should consider even more your prospects' options to, number one, do it themselves, or number two, to not do what you're offering at all. The next great idea from this book is this. Don't squander one point of contact. It may be your only one. Study each point of contact, then improve each one significantly. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, then you probably know that I talk a lot about sales funnels and sales paths. In other words, how people go from not knowing about you at all to becoming loyal customers. Now, whether you're familiar with sales funnels or not, the point is that it pretty much logically makes sense that every single contact point that you have with your leads or prospects can make a huge, huge difference, can lead to a reply or to building trust or to flat out buying. So the point here is to optimize every step you can where you interact with your prospect. Now, that might be a cold call, that might be a social media interaction, that might be a cold email. Pretty much any time that you interact with them, you want to optimize the opportunity to build trust and to promote yourself and ultimately to sell. The next great idea from this book is this. Get out there, almost anywhere. Let opportunity hit you. Now, I know there is a huge body of work in the entrepreneurship world that says, cut out 99.999% of everything and just focus on your one thing. Now, to be fair, that does have a benefit, but on the other hand, it can also benefit you a ton to actually get out there, especially when it comes to agency services or coaching or pretty much selling any other type of service which requires your actual time, like web design or SEO or running ads or literally a billion other things. The point is that any type of freelancing or agency work or service is ultimately a relationship business. In other words, people tend to buy from people they like, people they know, people they are familiar with, and overall, the better and more relationships you have, generally the better you'll do. I've mentioned in previous videos that actually I'm about to go in less than 1 week to 2 back-to-back events. The first one is Russell Brunson's Funnel Hacking Live event, which I will be going to for the 4th time, FYI, and I'm also going to the Vid Summit event in LA here close by, which has more to do with YouTube and video marketing. Now, may they be overpriced, especially Vid Summit? Probably yes, but the point is, or the more important factor, is that I will be mixing it up. I will be meeting people, getting to know people that I wouldn't have otherwise. The point is just to get out there one way or another, whether that's getting published on Forbes.com, whether that is attending a live event or a local one at your Chamber of Commerce or Toastmasters or whatever. The point is that staying locked in your room all day, every day, there are people who have succeeded that way, and there are benefits to that or in certain situations. But overall, getting out there, actually mixing it up, and giving luck a chance. I am a huge fan of this fact or of this idea, which is that you actually need to mix some things up, put yourself in different situations, meet different people to give luck a chance to kick off and to launch whatever goal you may have. The next great idea from this book is this: the competent and likable solo consultant will attract far more business than the brilliant but socially deficient expert. In large part, service marketing is a popularity contest. Now, I kind of left out the huge paragraph and chunks about how business is ultimately similar to high school, which means that it is, for better or worse, a popularity contest.
But I can't help it that I'm popular.
Now, I'm not saying this is a good or bad thing, but what I am saying is that generally being known, having more connections, being likable tends to have outsized benefits than the effort that it takes to put into them. In other words, somebody who is average in skills, but highly skilled in connections and networking will generally do much, much better than somebody who is the #1 best person in the world at that thing, but who is unfriendly and unconnected and people don't like them. The next great idea from this book is this: service providers think that silence is golden. They think the lack of complaints means their relationship is going well, but it is growing worse. Now, when it comes to freelancers, agency owners, pretty much any type of service provider, many of them, which I am familiar with, tend to think, oh, well, I don't talk to my prospects or clients much, and that's a good thing, right? Now, to be fair, there are clients who prefer less contact and who prefer to just get things done and not worry about it and not interact and not be involved at all, which is fine. If your benefits aren't top of mind for them, then of course you are going to be first on the chopping block for the cuts, even though marketing and sales cuts should be the last cuts a struggling business should make. So anyway, the point is that just because your clients are quiet doesn't necessarily mean you should be happy about that. You should make an effort to keep them up to date and to let them know what you're doing and what value you're providing. The next great idea from this book is this: don't expect the client to see how hard you've worked, how much you've cared, and how well you've performed. So often, the client is the last to know. Make sure the client knows. Now, this is kind of similar to the last point we just mentioned, but the point is that whether your client is paying you $500 a month or $5,000 a month or $5 million a month or whatever it might be, the point is that it is extremely easy for them to forget your value, even if you're providing a super valuable service. Now, this kind of goes back to the point of avoiding buyer's remorse, which is an extremely natural human feeling, which is that when you buy anything, especially something resource intensive, aka expensive, a lot of people tend to think, do I really need this right after they buy it? So one of the biggest things you could do to help you is to avoid or to cancel out that feeling of buyer's remorse. So anyway, the point is that no matter how great your sales call was, how great your relationship is, or how high your price was, or whatever, it is extremely easy for your prospect or client or buyer to forget the details of your offer or your value or anything like that. So it is part of your job to remind them, whether that be with monthly or weekly reports or whatever it might be. The next great idea from this book is this. How long are you willing to look to find the very best when somebody very good is readily available? How much more will you pay for the very best, especially if very good is good enough? So I know this might sound a little contrary to a lot of the Disney movies that you grew up with and so forth, but the point is that when we are looking for the very, very best at anything, the very best car to buy, the very best coach to hire, the very best microphone to buy, the very best bookshelf, whatever it might be. The point is that in our long search for something, when we find something that is really good, very high quality, we aren't going to spend a ton more energy looking for the very best, which generally seems like only a marginal difference. Now, of course, this can be applied to finding a vendor or an agency to hire, or even a boyfriend or girlfriend to date or even marry. And to be double fair, I'm not saying this is a bad idea. In fact, in most cases, this is probably a good idea to not hold out for the perfect, absolutely best option when you already have an option in hand that is extremely high quality or good enough. The next great idea from this book is similar, which is this. People do not look to make the superior choice. They want to avoid making a bad choice. In other words, a lot of us do our absolute best to make sure we look like the better choice as compared to our competitors and alternatives. But all the while, we don't pay enough attention to flat out making ourselves look like a good choice. So in other words, we focus more on being better than on being good in the first place. In other words, if you sell microphones, you might go around telling everybody, we are better than the best microphone brand in the world. Okay, that's fine. But actually, what most prospects and buyers are actually looking for isn't the best. It's actually to avoid making a bad decision. The next great idea from this book is to don't sell your service, sell your prospect. Now, this might be the number one most important sentence from this book, but the reason why it's not like in a top 5 or something is because this is a little bit more of a general sales point, which is that you should focus a billion times more on who you are talking to as opposed to what you are trying to sell them. So for example, let's say that I sell USB microphones. Now, there are a lot of different people who could benefit from that offer. YouTubers and podcasters and people who run webinars and probably general business marketers and social media agency owners and a billion other people that I won't get into here. But the point is that depending on which specific group of people I am speaking with, out of all the people that could benefit from my offer, the point is that I should focus on who I am selling to as opposed to what I am selling them. And to be fair, the what is pretty closely connected to the who. The next great idea from this book is this: people hear what they see. People will trust their eyes far before they will ever trust your words. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. This pretty much just means that you can talk and type and write all that you want, but generally people tend to believe and internalize and emotionalize with what they see, for better or worse. So I know that this seems like a pretty simple point, but this can be extremely important and can make a big difference. So in other words, no matter, I know it goes back to like middle school or high school where they told you show, don't tell. Same exact story. If you tell people, I can help you get more leads, don't tell them. Show them somebody you have done that for and how well you did it. Whatever it might be, the point is that if you show them, that could be a brochure, that could be a case study, that could be a testimonial. This is where you have a little bit of creativity, a little bit. However you can, show them what you're telling them. The next great idea from this book is this: if you are selling something complex, simplify it with a metaphor. Now, this is another deeply sales-rooted or sales-related tip here, which is that metaphors can make a gigantic difference, which I can't emphasize enough, in your promotion and your sales. Now, this pretty much means comparing or simplifying your offer or benefit into something more understandable. So if you sell USB microphones, you probably want to tell them, oh, it captures this many frequency and this many hertz or megahertz, and it has, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know much about audio and all that stuff, but the point is that you might want to give them all the technical details, but it will probably and more often be much more useful and more persuasive for you if you tell them something like this. You know, it's kind of like if you read a gigantic, huge dictionary with the letters that are like 2-point font and it's a huge headache to read it, as opposed to a kid's book where the letters are huge and there's a lot of pictures. Now, whether you like that example or not, you understand the difference between those two examples that I just mentioned. A thick volume of a dictionary or encyclopedia, if you remember what those are, as opposed to a kid's book or even Harry Potter or I don't know, something like that, which at least has some animations. And the absolute best point from this book is to hit the like button and subscribe below. If you learned something interesting today, it does help a lot. Have you read Selling the Invisible or anything else by Harry Beckwith? Or did I miss any other tips about how to sell services? Definitely let us know in the comments below as well. For more help finding your niche, booking more calls, or getting more clients, then grab my workbook below, or you could book a call with me there as well. Well, that wraps us up for today. Thanks everyone for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next one.